Welcome to Discovering Creativity. We have Orin Davis and Esteban from Instituto San Miguelense. It's a pleasure to have both of you here, and I'm going to let you get started, and all the best. Thank you.
Hello, Orion. How are you?
Good. It's Oren, Oro in Spanish if necessary.
Orion.
Or in Spanish, Oro, you can call me that also. Dr. Davis, Professor Davis, whatever you want.
Okay, I like Professor Davis. It sounds really professional. I mean, I know you're a professional and I like it. So I'm going to go with Professor Davis. Well, Professor Davis, it's an honor. It's a pleasure to me to be here with you talking about a lot of stuff that we want to talk with you right now. My name is Esteban, as Hector already said. And first of all, I want to start talking to you and ask you, who is Professor Davis? I mean, we have read a little bit about yourself in social media, like on your website. And we also found some other podcast that you made with somebody else. And he spoke about, well, your personal life a little bit. And you were there. But we want to ask you, like, who is Professor Davis?
So I'm a self-actualization engineer, and self-actualization is something that I've really been into for almost all my life. Even when I was a kid, I was asking questions about human potential and how we fulfill it. My dad's got some funny stories about that. But I figured I would study people from the micro level to the macro level. So I did chemistry, I did neuroscience, I did data analysis and statistics, and ended up going to grad school doing a PhD in positive psychology and organizational behavior. And that's I went to Claremont to work with Csikszentmihalyi.
Okay.
And do my PhD with him. Did my undergrad at Brandeis, doing work on computational neuroscience, human memory. Worked under Michael Kahana. Had a great time doing that also. After that, I spent time as an adjunct professor, did the tenure track thing for a while, decided it wasn't for me, and became an HR consultant. And I like applying all the stuff that I study, like taking the science and the research that I do and applying it to the workplace, where I'm, me and my organization, the Quality of Life Laboratory, and our consulting arm is making workplaces great places to work. So in addition to doing the consulting, I'm now building out a think tank and trying to build out like an HR think tank that's really bringing forth the cutting edge of people science and, most importantly, positive organizational psychology, but then also applying it in workplaces. And then, as a sidebar to that, I'm doing a lot with startups, so helping them with their go-to-market strategy, helping them with product design, concept design, and especially also helping them staff up after they've gotten some funding.
Okay. I mean, you have been doing a lot of stuff during these years, and I think that's a really good example of how people can use their time in a good way. And something that I loved and that I read and it was like amazing is that you have helped a lot of people, and not just people, also like companies or industries. Because I was reading and I saw something about positive psychology, and of course about the creativity and flow. And I read a little bit about that, and it said that you can help people to be like concerned about their own abilities, but also about their goals, and how to manage all that energy and all that experience and abilities to grow in a single way. But you have taken that and you have put it like with a lot of people in groups, and you have helped not just individually, also like in groups. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. So some of the work that I've done on flow, it's been individual flow, it's been micro flow, but also I work with Chef Eisenhower on team flow.
Uh-huh.
And so part of what we've been doing is trying to understand how we get flow experiences in teams. And Jeff has been the one who's really been spearheading the work. I sort of, frame it that Jeff is the pilot, I'm the co-pilot. He's the one who's really like steering a lot of this stuff. We've been collaborating on this since 2009. Back when, funnily enough, Jeff and I were both working on it independently, and Csikszentmihalyi met Jeff and said, "You need to meet my grad student. He's also working on this." And we've been at it ever since.
And like something that you said that it's about the positive psychology, I want to know if I'm understanding the right way or the way it should be understood. Positive psychology, it's when somebody understands themselves, or how will you describe the positive psychology?
Well, you may have heard me say that probably the number one tip that I can offer anybody is to know themselves.
Okay.
And you heard me on podcasts. It's my constant refrain of like, what is the number one thing that people can do? Probably the best intervention. And I say it's getting to know yourself. So that's a very important thing. Positive psychology in general is the science of human flourishing. It's really an offshoot of humanistic psychology.
Okay.
Coming from like Maslow, Adler, Rogers, those folks. In the mid 1900s, they built up a humanistic psychology, and positive psychology is basically just adding a few extra details to it, but it's still fundamentally humanistic psychology, which is focused also on human flourishing and how people can self-actualize. And like one of the fundamental principles of humanistic psychology is that human beings actually have a drive towards self-actualization. That if people are not self-actualizing, it means that there's some kind of block.
Uh-huh.
And that when we remove the block, when we give people the freedom to self-actualize, that's when they do.
So it's also part of, I want to say this, like to free all our potential, right?
Well, to make sure that it isn't blocked.
Okay.
I mean, some of the thing is that some of the vicissitudes of life, like some of the the things that can happen to us, even on a day-to-day basis, these things can actually screw us up at times, and
Right.
they can sometimes create things like fears or things like traumas, or even just things like bad experiences that make us shy about embracing some of the new growth opportunities that might be coming our way.
Oh, okay, I get it. So surely in all this time you have met a lot of people that they have been like on that block on themselves, on their understanding, their creativity, their abilities, and they don't know how to move on. But can you share with us? We want to know if you have like any story or experience with anybody who had like understand the flow, understand the psychology, and now how they started on that block, and now where are they now?
So I think almost everybody runs into this situation at times. So I think that there's a lot of people that I work with. I do some executive coaching also, and thinking of, let's say, one client that I had who was really struggling with work-life balance. I think this was a lot of her problem, and she was getting very overstressed, and things weren't working out well in her life in a lot of different directions. And so one of the things that I got her to understand was that there are many things that are important to her, and she has to sort of get a sense of what are all the things that are important to her, what are all the pieces of her life that she needs to address,
Right.
and actually make sure that she's putting in time on all of them. But she wasn't necessarily doing to it in a way that allowed her to get the balance that she was really going for.
Right. Like, I have a personal question here. As a graphic designer student, I'm a graphic design student, and like sometimes, like you just said it, we have all been there in that block, in any part of our lives when we are struggling with a lot of problems, with a lot of stress, with a lot of things that we can't manage and that they are out of our hands, and you need to prioritize like your times and how to quit thinking about a lot of stuff that you just can't handle and focus on the important things. But sometimes as a student, and you already know this, of course, we don't know how to do that. So can you give us some advices to all these students that we are going to watch or hear this material, this podcast, to know how to manage all of these stress, problems, topics on school, so we can understand a little bit more about ourselves and how to reach that flow?
Sure. So this wouldn't so much be about flow. This is more about self-actualization.
Okay.
Flow is really about your experiences and being able to have an optimal experience. Say, for example, when you're doing graphic design. But when we're talking about something like this, what we find is that a lot of students do not know themselves.
Right.
And they've never taken the time. As a matter of fact, especially these days, like students, current undergraduates who are going through university right now, I'm finding that a lot of them, they've done what they were told. And they're basically just like, well, do what you're supposed to do. And like, even when I ask questions in class, it's like, all I want to know is, Professor, what do you want to hear? Not what's the answer, not what do I think is the answer, but Professor, what are you going to hear that's going to get me a pat on the head? Or get me my participation trophy, or get me my A, or whatever it is. And people have lost track of what the important things are because they haven't spent the time thinking about it. I'll give you an example.
Right.
I teach in business school, and I ask my students, why do you want to go into finance? A lot of them want to go into finance. Why do you want to go into finance? They say, I want to make a lot of money. Yeah, why? What do you want to do with that? But okay, let's fast forward. You worked in finance. You're now a multimillionaire. You've got an incredible amount of money. Now, what are you going to do with it? I don't know. They're like, you're telling me that that you want to do all the things, you want to make money, but they never thought about what they want to spend it on. What do they want to buy with it? And you're like, oh well, I guess the house and the car and okay, you know what? You can buy a house and a car without working on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want, like, what kind of, well, if you have a mansion, who's going to live in it with you? You have this humongous house. Who's going to, like, that's a lot of house for one person. What's the point?
Right.
Or they say, okay, well, maybe I'll just get a luxury apartment in the city. Okay, and who's coming over? Who are you sharing it with? Like, are you just going to sit there like, Scrooge McDuck from the comics and count your money every day? Like, what is the point? And the funniest thing is they never, ever thought of what is the point of having a lot of money.
Right.
And they forget that money is a means. Or, you go to school and you want to get high grades. That's wonderful. What is the point of getting good grades? And you ask the students, it just stops them cold. What is the point of getting good grades? And it's like, well, that means I'm smart. No, it doesn't. That means I did well. No, it doesn't. So, well, it means I'm educated. No, it doesn't. So they don't think about why are they there? What are they really trying to do? And I'll tell you a story about a student of mine, and I have so much respect for this student.
Okay.
He actually I'm going to say two. First this one, then another one.
Okay.
This student of mine, he wrote I gave an exam in class, and he wrote, and it's at the end there's an essay question, and he decides instead of writing an essay, he's just going to write something else. It's still relevant, but he wrote something that was not an essay.
Okay.
And it took points. And it was really the only, he lost a couple points there. And I said to him, look, I'm sorry, you said everything right, but you lost some points because this isn't an essay. He said, Professor, keep the points. I had fun.
Huh.
That's one. And I have a lot of respect for that student because he understood what he was doing and he knew that he understood the concept and that the exam proved that he understood the concept and he understood that he lost points because I have to be fair. I have to, grade everybody the same way.
Right.
But the whole point is he understood the point of the exam is, does he know his stuff? And since the exam clearly proved that he knew his stuff, he was good with it.
Wow.
I'll tell you about another student. Once again, I have a lot of respect for her, great student. And one of the things that she got a B+ in my class.
Okay.
And she said to me, Professor, I'm very cool with B+. Honestly, it wasn't worth the effort, the extra effort that it would take to get from B+ to A. It just wasn't worth it. And again, that's a good student. That's somebody who understands that she totally could have gotten an A if she wanted to, but she has better things to do with her time than get the A. She just realized that, look, it might take, the amount of extra effort it's going to take, I'd rather put it into something else. By the way, today she is extremely successful. Has a very successful career. We've kept in touch over the years. It's been many years since she was my student. She has done extremely well because, again, she prioritizes her time. She understands why she's there.
Okay.
And that's my number one piece of advice to students. Why are you there? Why are you chasing the grades, the money, even the degree? Why are you doing that? Are you getting what you want? Do you know your values? And do you know what you want to do with these things? Or are you just there doing what people tell you you're supposed to do just because you're supposed to do it?
Wow. Well, that was a really deep answer. I mean, it made me start thinking a lot about about my priorities and a lot of things that I'm doing right now. So thank you so much for sharing this. And I have a question in all of this. Like, have you ever faced that you talk with a student, or like what you said on this experience that you ask your students, why do you want to earn so much money? Like, you don't know what to do with it. Like, have you ever faced with somebody who said, okay, I don't know why, but instead of taking that way of thinking and make improvements and change, like, have they stopped and have they like been on this situation where they now are struggling with the idea of, I don't know why I'm here and what I'm going to do? Like, isn't there a really tiny wall between changing and improving and just getting to like a kind of depression or something like that?
Well, part of it is my asking them that question may have helped them realize where they're at, but it's not going to cause them to go there.
Okay.
It's not going to cause them, like, asking the question doesn't cause the problem. The problem's there. Asking the question makes you aware of the problem. And what a lot of us do, and, I've caught myself doing this in other areas, is we keep our heads down. I have a bit of workaholism myself, and I keep my head down. I just do my work. And part of that's because I'm trying to avoid things.
Okay.
And like workaholics, we're trying to avoid certain things. What we do is we put our heads down, we just blow our way through. We don't really think about what we're doing, or we're being busy to be busy, because we don't want to stop and think about some of the things that we're avoiding thinking about.
That's right.
And that's what, so then when I ask them the question that's forcing them to stop and think about it, I have not created the problem. What I did do, however, was point out that it's there, and then they realize, oh gosh, it's there, and I've been avoiding it, and oh damn, now I have to deal with it now.
Okay, now I get it, and yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's like in this way of thinking that it's like I'm really stressed and have a lot of problems, and I say, oh, I wish I could be on Miami or Las Vegas or Cancun. That will not change anything. Because you will take yourself to that place. You will take the problem with you. You will take your brain with you. You will take your heart, your feelings with you. So you have to face and fix all that things. It doesn't matter if you are here or in your bedroom or in your classroom. At the end of the day, you have to fix that. And then it doesn't matter where you are. You will be able to enjoy your life and whatever is happening on the environment. That makes sense.
Also, some people go on those trips just to avoid.
Yeah.
Just to avoid thinking about it, I'd rather just go to the playa and I don't have to worry about a darn thing.
Yeah. I have one friend. He's struggling right now with. He just broke up with his girlfriend. I mean, and he was like, I try to keep my mind busy. I have to go to work every day and just go to the gym, and I just focus on whatever I'm doing. But when I'm alone on my bedroom, he said, that's when I face the problem, and that's like the tough time comes. And it's like, well, man, I don't know what to say that, right? But yeah, it's kind of that part of the life that you said it. Sometimes people avoid problems, but they don't like to face problems. And the problem will be there and will stay there until we do something about it.
Often, yes. And I mean, funnily enough, we can be very creative about how we try to avoid problems, but also one of the interesting things about problems, and there's no life without them.
Yeah.
Is that these problems and their resolution often help create a uniqueness for us. And they become part of our uniqueness. And for each of us, we deal with it in different ways. For example, breaking up with a partner. Most of us have had partners and breakups. And yet, here's the weird part. How many people, just think in your own head, how many people have had a breakup with a partner? And then if you look at it, it's the funny thing to realize is that every one of those breakups was different.
Yeah.
They were all different, and how they got handled was different. And the way that each person, especially if you know somebody that had a breakup, let's say a couple years ago, like think about some of the people you know that have had a breakup a couple years ago. Has their uniqueness become more evident since that breakup? Some people are going to be yes, because they worked on themselves and use that as a basis for getting self-knowledge, or getting strong, or being able to deal with difficult things. And some of them just ran away from it completely, never ever dealt with it. And the funny thing is, their uniqueness has suffered. And I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that pain is the only way to do that, nor am I saying that adversity is the only way to do that. But what I am pointing out is when we experience adversity, and we all do, what comes of it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And one of the important parts of our uniqueness in that aspect is that as we build up the uniqueness, we build up our own perspective on things, and that facilitates, as we know, creativity is a combination of the novel and the useful, to use Mondelez's definition. So what's interesting is we bring that uniqueness and that contributes to the novelty of what we create. So for instance, you said you were a graphic design student, yeah?
Yeah.
So I would bet that if I could just look at the graphics you've made, and then I looked at your life, I would bet that there are some connections, that there are places where you figured things out in your life, or you figured things out about yourself. And I'm talking about positive experiences, negative experiences, everything. But it shows up in your graphics somehow. It may show up in your style. It may show up in your color choices. It may show up, for example, let's say, in whether you are more geometric or whether you're fuzzier or like these things. And you'll see them and they'll be understandable because of the life you live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's at the end. A lot of people who works on these art area, like graphic designers or musicians or actors or whatever you have to be with, like creating something, they sometimes, or most of them, because I have heard some other like painters that they have decided to make a difference between their work and their personal life. But a lot of other people show their feelings, their sensations, their experiences on their work, like graphic designers or musicians with songs, or some other painters, or, like people, or writers also. And that's how a lot of people deals with a lot of these situations that, well, of course, about this, Professor Davis, about psychology and all of that. People deals with all these problems or guilt sometimes, or emotions, by leaving them on that work, on that paint, on that song, on that instrument. And everybody, it's a type of therapy.
Type of what? I'm sorry?
Therapy.
I don't know if I would call it a therapy so much as I would call it an expression.
Expression, okay.
I mean, yeah, sometimes we are working it out as we create the art and we use the art. Like I would say that when we're using the art for therapy, we're using it to work out the issues.
Okay.
Whereas in some cases, we're using the art just to express the issues. So I want to differentiate between art as expression and art as therapy.
But we could use art as therapy.
Yes, absolutely, and that's why it's actually a career called art therapy.
Oh, okay.
Where in some cases, part of what happens is, art is the language of its own. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, like there's so much that can be expressed, for instance, in a graphic.
Yeah.
That cannot be expressed in words. And when we have emotions, sometimes we can have, let's say, emotions or experiences that, in part because of our own uniqueness in the experience, and in part because we're not sure how to convey the emotion to others, we don't use words.
Yeah.
Or maybe we use words in a very specific way, as in poetry or as in song lyrics or something like that, because using words in plain English sentences doesn't convey it the way we want to. So we need the art of poetry, or we need the art of lyrics to make that happen. Some people want to express that just in sound. So they do that as instrumental music. Or they put, other lyrics, but it's the melody line that's driving them on this. Or they'll make a visual piece, like a sculpture or a painting or something like that. And, we look at some of these things and they cause us to feel in a way that is, somewhat ineffable. If you look at like some of the greatest pieces of art that we've put out there, or rather, and that we've seen, like just for instance, I remember seeing, I think it was called "Hand of God" by Rodin, and just an incredible piece. And I don't know why it hit me the way that it did, but it just did. And I don't think that I really could tell you how it felt to look at that piece. I don't think I could explain that to you in words in any language. But I can tell you that was a unique experience, and it was a very interesting experience emotionally for me. And I can see that Rodin understood something that does not come in English. But then you see that sculpture, and it's like there's an understanding that you have with Rodin that is, he's told you something. And it's not just that he's told you something, it's that you heard something also. And that's kind of what's interesting as well. So we have this experience with art, the artist of making it, but then the viewer, the witness, for lack of a better term, in their experience of it. And we see something that is not necessarily, there's not something that we can necessarily put into words. I mean, think about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, something in Ode to Joy, when the man is, as I understand it, he was already profoundly deaf by then. Supposedly, somebody had to tell him to turn around so that he could see the standing ovation.
Yeah.
So, but somebody who's been through all of that, and the trials and tribulations of Beethoven, and then for him to write the Ode to Joy and this incredible Ninth Symphony. That says something also. And I know people that cannot listen to the Ninth Symphony with a straight face ever. Wow. And it just affects them in a way. And you ask them, like, why do you start crying in the Ninth Symphony every time? I know one person, third movement, always cries in the third movement. And you ask them, like, why? And they cannot tell you, that they just feel something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's one of the parts of art. That's why art is so beautiful, and it's I didn't knew about this career name, art therapy. I didn't knew about this. Mm-hmm. I mean that it's so interesting, and I wanna encourage all the people who are listening to us or who will listen to this podcast to just be themselves, and if they need to express themselves in any way, art will be always there for you. I mean, like, I don't know, have you ever spoke with a person who has find solutions or exits, or as you said, waves of expression on art, but when they were like almost at the edge of the, on the they were almost close to fail, but they found the solution or the feeling, or like you said with the Beethoven, they felt something and now they change. Like, have you ever had this kind of experience yourself or with any other person?
So I think many people have. I know, but I mean, part of it is, many of us are looking for this profound change moment. Mm-hmm. Ironically, it doesn't work that way. We have a profound realization, maybe. But the profound realizations and these aha moments that we have, they're only part of the picture. And the thing is that there's a lot of work. Research actually shows that prior to an aha moment, there's a lot that happens. And, one of my favorite examples, if you read Darwin's journals, one of the things he realized is he figured out evolution long before he realized that he figured out evolution. But you look at it, it's like, dude, you already figured it out. You look at the old journals like, come on, man, you got it. You figured it out already. But he doesn't realize it. And sometimes what's happening in those, discovery moments is that we're finally able to articulate clearly, or to know clearly what we've been trying to figure out. But then comes the implementation. then comes, how we live by this thing that we discovered. So in art therapy, for example, what art therapists might do is they may encourage you to do art as a way of, let's say, feeling some feelings that you've been avoiding, because the experience of those feelings may be too much.
Okay.
And it may be too much to express, or you may not know how to express yourself in those feelings. And art therapists understand that there's a language inherent in art that goes beyond words. Okay, so you know what? Don't tell me the words. Show me this. Make me some music. Dance it out. And part of that is, in some of these cases, it doesn't necessarily have to be good. It has to be expressive.
Right.
How does it feel? And then being able to get these things in front of you can help you as you look at this art that you've created. Okay, now that you have seen this thing, now that you've expressed this thing, now what is it? Now it may be easier to explore because you have something in front of you. And you may not have the words for it after that. You may never find the words for it after that, but you'll be able to find words around it. You'll be able to find words to describe it. And then you can combine those descriptions with your inherent sense, that ineffable sense of like what it was, plus the words around it to get you new understanding. But then there's still the matter of implementation. You still then got to integrate that into your daily life and make that change. So we don't necessarily have the change moment so much as the moment of understanding of exactly what needs to change and how, and then there's the hard work in front of you.
Yeah, that is really true. Like, and I don't know if I can call it or I should call it sad, but in my point of view, it's something really tough to think that some people are really close to reach that understanding moment. They are so close. As you said, like Darwin, he had that already, but he just wasn't there yet. And there are people that they already have the answer, but they don't reach that understanding, and sometimes they never do it. And I mean, that's deep. I want to change.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Like it makes you think about a lot of stuff and a lot of things. Surely, I want to change the subject and talk about once again about yourself, about you. You had a experience with I didn't catch the name with a doctor. Yeah. Yeah. And we wanted to ask you like some of your thoughts about it, the highlights. Can you share with us this experience?
Sure. So first of all, Csikszentmihalyi is a hell of a guy. Really enjoyed his work on flow. And when I was a post-bac working at Mass General, I was doing neuroimaging research, and I came across this book on flow, the 1990 book on flow. And I thought this was really interesting. And, around that time, one of my mentors convinced me that I should do a PhD, not an MD PhD, that I really didn't need to go to medical school to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. And I thought Csikszentmihalyi's work was very interesting. And so I wrote him and I asked him if I would be able to work with him as a graduate student. Making a long story short, but he said yes to that. And it was really an amazing experience, in part because getting to work with him, and I think that's something people did not understand about him, may he rest in peace, was that he was always ahead of his books. His book, like by the time the book came out, he was way ahead of those ideas.
Wow.
And the book was merely a snapshot of what he was thinking at the time that he wrote it. And I had several conversations with him where he would say something to the effect of like, "Oh, that was so 2005." Like, and I mean, he didn't put it that way, of course, but what he basically pointed out is, well, yeah, that's what I was thinking, like, 8-10 years ago when I wrote the book, or like when I wrote that paper, but like that's not what I'm thinking now. And some of the conversations that he and I had, I mean, gosh, if we could have recorded some of those, like I think people would look at things a little bit differently, because a lot of people are very stuck on like what he said in 1975 or like what he said in 1990. And it's like, I was talking with him, in the late aughts.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is 25 years. 15 years rather after Flow's 1990. 15 years after Flow came out, and like everybody's talking about what he said, and Flow was like, yes, I understand what he wrote in 1990, and so does he, but like that's not where we're at.
Yeah.
And I would see people, posting things from that he wrote in 1975 and Beyond Boredom and Anxiety, and it's like that's not where he's at. I know, I was talking to him about it. And I would that I could have, taken some of those conversations, but, obviously they were private conversations.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
That was, also Mentor talking to his protege. But one of the things that I thought was, one of the most incredible about Csikszentmihalyi was the notion that there's nothing sacred here. Nothing in the science is sacred. None of his theories are inviolable or definitively right. And I found that he was a very humble guy that way. And, you have to go where the science leads. And he was totally prepared to revise his ideas, revise his theories. And he was very emphatic that I not be dogmatic.
Okay.
Even if it was his own theories. And it was a very funny conversation that he and I had once that he told me I was being too dogmatic about his theory. Like that's a profound lesson for you. Like, when the person who came up with it is telling you you're being too dogmatic about it, it's like, okay, that's thought. Like, you gotta, okay, don't be too dogmatic about anything. And that was the point. He taught me to, take things not with a grain of salt necessarily, but to not, just because there was no such thing as the science is settled.
Right.
The science is what we know thus far. And the science is always what we know thus far, or our best knowledge to